I never thought loneliness could drive a man to madness. But after my divorce, after years of trying to rebuild something that had already burned to ash, I found myself in a small apartment staring at the same cracked ceiling night after night, asking myself if this was all life had left for me. I was 49, the house was quiet, my son barely spoke to me, and my friends had long moved on with their families. I'd scroll through social media, watching everyone else's lives unfold in colorful photos, vacations, weddings, anniversaries, while I sat in silence, nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey. There's a strange kind of ache that comes with being unseen. It wasn't about needing someone to love me, it was about needing someone to see me again. That's when I started watching travel vlogs about Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, all these men my age talking about new beginnings, second chances, love stories that sounded like redemption songs. And then I found Cambodia. The videos showed sunsets over the Mekong River, temple ruins bathed in gold light, and smiling locals who looked genuinely happy despite having far less than we did back home. It seemed like a place where time slowed down, where maybe I could start again without all the noise. A few months later, I booked a one-way ticket to Phnom Penh. The moment I stepped out of the airport, the air hit me like a warm blanket, thick, humid, and alive. Tuk-tuks weaved through traffic, vendors shouted in Khmer, and the smell of grilled meat filled the air. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that made me feel alive again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I rented a small apartment near the riverside, nothing fancy, just a studio with peeling paint and a fan that rattled when it spun. I started eating breakfast at the same café every morning. The owner, a cheerful woman named Lena, always greeted me with a smile and a plate of fried rice. The regulars started recognizing me. "Hello, Mr. John," they'd say. It was the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in years. That's where I first saw her. She was sitting alone at a table by the window, scrolling through her phone. Her hair was long and black, her skin soft like porcelain, and when she smiled at the waiter, it was the kind of smile that made you forget what you were doing. She couldn't have been older than 27. I told myself not to stare, but I did. Every morning, I found myself timing my coffee so I'd be there when she was. I didn't know her name yet, just that she always ordered iced coffee with condensed milk and sat by the window like she belonged to the sunlight. One morning, fate did what I didn't have the courage to do. The cafe was full, and she was looking for a seat. I motioned to the empty chair across from me and smiled. "Please, you can sit here." She hesitated for a second, then smiled back and took the seat. "Thank you, mister," she said in a soft accent. "My name's John," I said. "I'm Dara," she replied. Her voice was gentle but confident, her English broken but sweet. We started talking small things at first. She told me she worked part-time at a phone shop nearby and was taking English classes at night. I told her I was just visiting Cambodia for a while, trying to find some peace. She nodded like she understood, even though I didn't tell her what I was really running from. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other almost every day. Sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. She'd wave to me from across the street or drop by the cafe just to say hello. One evening, she asked if I wanted to see the sunset by the river. That walk changed everything. The sky was painted in gold and violet, and the city glowed with that slow, timeless rhythm you only feel in Southeast Asia. Dara told me about her family, a small village outside Kampong Cham, a sick mother she sent money to, a younger brother who wanted to study engineering, but couldn't afford it. Her life was simple, but she spoke about it with pride. There was no bitterness, no envy, just gratitude. And I, a man who'd spent years bitter at the world, felt something shift inside me. When she looked at me, I didn't feel old or broken. I felt like a man again. That night, after we parted ways, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew what people would say, that she was too young, that she probably saw me as a wallet with legs. But when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see manipulation. I saw kindness. And when you've been starved of affection long enough, kindness feels like love. Within a month, Dara had become part of my daily life. We'd eat dinner together at street stalls, sharing noodles under flickering neon lights. She taught me how to say thank you and good morning in Khmer. She'd laugh every time I got the pronunciation wrong. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand without saying anything, and in those small gestures, I found the comfort I'd been craving for years. I told myself I was taking things slow, but deep down, I knew I was falling fast. Still, there were moments brief, fleeting, when something in her eyes changed. When I'd talk about going back home, she'd grow quiet. When I mentioned my savings or my plans to maybe start a small business in Cambodia, her attention would sharpen just a little too much. But I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, hadn't I been through enough loneliness to deserve a little happiness? One evening, as we sat watching the riverboats drift under the bridge, Dara leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You are a good man, John. I don't want you go back." And in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself and to her that I wouldn't. I thought I'd finally found the peace I'd been chasing halfway across the world. I had no idea that I'd just stepped into a dream that would slowly turn into a nightmare. The weeks that followed felt like something out of a second chance. I didn't think life would ever hand me. Dara became the rhythm to my days. We'd meet in the mornings at the café, laugh over my clumsy Khmer, and end our evenings sitting by the river, talking about everything and nothing at all. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met before. She was sweet but not naive, kind but sharp, with a sense of humor that could pull me out of even my darkest moods. For the first time in years, I stopped thinking about my past. I wasn't the divorce man, the failure, or the outsider anymore. I was just John, a man with a woman who made him feel like he mattered. We started spending more time together outside the usual spots. Dara took me to her favorite markets, introducing me to foods I'd never even heard of. Fermented fish paste, grilled frogs, rice cakes wrapped in banana leaves. The city opened up through her eyes, and it felt less foreign, less lonely. When she laughed, people around her couldn't help but smile too. She had that rare energy that made life feel lighter just by being near her. One Saturday, she asked if I wanted to meet her family. It caught me off guard. It seemed early, but she said her mother had been asking about me. "She want to meet you. She think maybe you good man," she said with a shy smile. I agreed, feeling both nervous and flattered. The trip to her village took 4 hours by bus. The further we got from Phnom Penh, the more the world seemed to slow down. Dirt roads replaced asphalt, and the air smelled of wet earth and smoke from cooking fires. Her family's house was a small wooden structure on stilts, with chickens roaming underneath and kids running barefoot in the yard. Her mother greeted me with a wide smile and a polite bow. She didn't speak English, but the warmth in her eyes said more than words could. They offered me food, rice, wine, and endless questions about where I was from and what I did. Dara translated bits and pieces, giggling at my awkward answers. I watched her with her family that night, the way she teased her younger brother, the way she helped her mother wash dishes under the dim light of a single bulb, and I felt something in my chest tighten. She wasn't pretending to be someone else. She was just herself, kind, grounded, loyal. When we left the next morning, her mother held my hand and said something in Khmer. Dara smiled. "She say she happy you come. She say maybe you make Dara happy life." That sentence stayed with me. After that visit, things between us changed subtly, but meaningfully. Dara started spending more nights at my apartment. She'd cook simple meals, wash my clothes even when I told her not to, and sit beside me while I worked on my laptop. Sometimes she'd talk about the future in that soft, uncertain way of someone dreaming aloud. "Maybe one day, small shop," she'd say. "I sell clothes, you help me with English." It felt innocent enough until she started mentioning money. At first, it was small things. Her mother needed medicine. Her brother had to pay school fees. I didn't think twice about helping. I told myself that's what partners did. They helped each other. And besides, the amounts were small, barely noticeable compared to what I used to spend on meaningless things back home. But as weeks turned into months, the requests started to grow. A new motorbike for her to get to work? A phone so she could stay in touch more easily? Each time, she looked embarrassed to ask, and I convinced myself It wasn't a big deal. I'd tell myself, she's not using me. She's just struggling. And yet, there were moments when doubt crept in. When I caught her texting late at night and she'd turn her phone away, when she'd disappear for hours with vague explanations, helping friend, visit auntie, and come back with that distant look in her eyes. One evening, I asked her directly, "Dara, are you seeing someone else?" Her expression shifted, instantly hurt, defensive, like I'd insulted her. "Why you say that? You don't trust me?" she snapped, her voice trembling. I felt terrible. I apologized right away. She cried softly into my shoulder, saying she was tired of people thinking bad things about girls, like her poor girls who just wanted love. That moment broke something in me. I promised myself I'd never doubt her again. For a while, things went back to normal. We took a short trip to Cambodia, a quiet town by the river where time seemed to stand still. We rented a small bungalow, rode a scooter through the countryside, and spent evenings drinking beer under the stars. Dara told me that with me, she finally felt safe. I wanted to believe that. One night, after a long day exploring, I found her sitting outside our bungalow staring at the water. Her face was calm, but her eyes seemed far away. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "About future," she said. "Maybe I marry one day, maybe have baby, but not easy life for Khmer girl. Men, they don't stay." There was something fragile in her voice. I reached out and took her hand. "Not all men," I said. "Some of us do." She looked at me, and something unspoken passed between us, a kind of quiet understanding, or maybe an illusion of one. That night, under the hum of the fan and the distant sound of crickets, she whispered, "I love you." It was the first time she'd said it. The words felt like salvation. When we got back to Phnom Penh, everything seemed brighter. Dara moved in with me permanently. She decorated the apartment with small touches, flowers, cheap curtains, photos of us smiling in front of temples and rivers. She started calling me Bong John, a Khmer term of affection. I didn't care how it looked from the outside. To me, it was real. I sent money to her family every month, helped her brother enroll in college, even talked to her about starting that clothing shop she dreamed of. I wanted to give her a life that was better than the one she had. Maybe, in doing that, I thought I could fix something broken inside myself too. But paradise always has a way of testing the people who come looking for healing. And somewhere between love and loneliness, I started ignoring the signs that everything I thought I'd found might not have been love at all. It was around the 6th month of living together when the cracks began to show. They didn't appear suddenly, like a storm out of nowhere. They crept in slowly, quietly, the way rot spreads beneath the surface of wood. At first, it was little things. Dara started going out more often, saying she needed to visit her mother or help friends. I didn't think much of it, but sometimes she'd come home hours later than expected, smelling faintly of cheap perfume that wasn't hers, or wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. When I asked about it, she'd laugh it off. "Oh, my friend, lend me this, Bong." But there was a new distance in her eyes when she spoke. I tried to ignore it. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe she was just enjoying life. Maybe I was being paranoid. But that quiet whisper in my chest kept growing louder, the one that said, "You've seen this before, haven't you?" I'd lie awake at night listening to the ceiling fan spin, wondering what she was really doing when she said she was helping her cousin. I'd glance at her phone when she left it on the table, but she always seemed to snatch it up before I could get close. She'd say, "Why are you so jealous? I'm with you every night." And that was true, she was with me. But her mind, her attention, her warmth, those felt like they were slipping somewhere else. One night, as we sat eating dinner, I noticed she was quiet, distracted. Her food sat untouched. I asked if something was wrong. She hesitated, then said softly, "My mother's sick again. Doctors say maybe she needs surgery." My heart sank. I told her I'd help. Of course I would. She shook her head like she didn't want to ask, but her eyes said otherwise. "How much?" I asked. She looked down. "Maybe $2,000? I wired it the next morning." She cried, hugged me, told me I was the only good man she'd ever met. I believed her. But a few days later, something strange happened. I got a message on Facebook from a man whose name I didn't recognize. His profile picture showed him standing next to a familiar smile, Dara's. "Hey," the message said. "You know Dara?" My stomach dropped. I didn't reply at first, but curiosity got the better of me. "Yes," I typed. "Why?" He sent back a photo of Dara at a karaoke bar, sitting beside him, her hand on his arm. The caption in Khmer said something I couldn't read, but I didn't need translation to understand the look in her eyes. I confronted her that night. She denied it immediately. Said he was just a friend, that people like to gossip, that I shouldn't believe everything I saw online. When I showed her the photo, she started crying, not the soft, remorseful kind of crying, but loud, defensive sobs that felt rehearsed. "You don't trust me," she shouted, pushing the phone away. "Why you always think bad about me? You think all Khmer girls same?" Her anger hit me like a slap. I wanted to fight back, to demand answers, but instead, I found myself apologizing. Somehow, I was the one saying sorry. And just like that, the topic vanished. She smiled again the next morning, cooked breakfast, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. But from then on, I could feel something had shifted permanently, something I couldn't fix. Over the next few weeks, the tension between us grew. Dara became more secretive, often locking herself in the bathroom with her phone. I started keeping mental notes the time she left, the excuses she gave. It made me feel pathetic, like a jealous old fool, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a story whose ending I already knew. Then came the night everything started to unravel. I had gone to meet a friend, an older expat I'd met at a local bar. His name was Greg, and he'd been living in Cambodia for almost 10 years. Over a few beers, I told him about Dara. He listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me. "Look, John," he said, "I'm not saying she's playing you, but this place, it runs on survival. You think it's love, but sometimes it's just survival in a pretty dress. Be careful." I wanted to defend her, but I couldn't find the words. When I got home that night, the apartment was dark. Dara wasn't there. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Midnight came, then 1 a.m., then 2. Finally, around 3, she stumbled in makeup, smudged, smelling of alcohol. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. She avoided my eyes. "With friends," she said, kicking off her shoes. "What friends?" she sighed, frustrated. "You always ask. You think I cheat. I'm tired of this." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I saw the truth I'd been trying to avoid. The warmth in her eyes was gone. Whatever we'd had in those early months had been replaced by something cold, something transactional. Still, I couldn't bring myself to end it. I told myself maybe I was overreacting, maybe she was just young, confused, trying to find her way. I didn't want to believe I'd been fooled again. Then came the business idea. Dara said she wanted to open her own clothing shop, the one she'd always dreamed about. She told me she'd found a good location near the market and that it would only take a few $1,000s to start. She promised to run it herself, said it would help support her family and make her independent. I hesitated, but she wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You believe in me, right?" And I did. Against every rational thought, I did. So I gave her $5,000, nearly everything I had left in my savings. She thanked me, said she loved me, said we'd build a future together. For a few days after that, she was warm again, affectionate, sweet, the Dara I remembered. But then she started leaving earlier in the mornings and coming home later. When I asked how the shop was going, she'd brush it off. Busy, many things to do. Weeks passed and I still hadn't seen the shop. One afternoon, I decided to surprise her. I took a tuk-tuk to the address she'd written down. When I arrived, there was no shop, just an empty lot with a rusted sign and piles of trash. I stood there in the heat, feeling something break inside me. That night, when she came home, I didn't say a word. I just handed her the slip of paper with the fake address. She froze. Then she smiled weakly. "I can explain," she said, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She said she could explain. But her voice trembled in a way that betrayed her before the words even left her mouth. Explain what, Dara? I asked, my tone calm but cold. That the shop doesn't exist? That you've been lying to me for months? Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. She sat down on the bed and started to cry. At first, I thought it was guilt. But there was something off, like the tears were more about being caught than being sorry. It's not like that, she said between sobs. I need time. The man who rent the shop, he lied to me. I pay him already. I lose everything. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly that it hurt. I sat down beside her, my hands shaking. How much? Did you pay him? I asked. She hesitated. All of it, she said softly. I looked at her face, searching for truth in her eyes. But the more she talked, the more the story fell apart. Details didn't line up, names changed, timelines blurred. It was like watching a web unravel thread by thread. Show me the papers, I said finally. She froze. What papers? The lease? The receipts? Something. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I throw away. I was so angry when he cheated me. That was it, the last lie I could tolerate. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. You didn't lose that money, Dara. You took it. Her expression hardened instantly. The sadness vanished, replaced by something cold, almost contemptuous. You think I steal from you? Yes, I said quietly. I think you did. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with all the unspoken things we'd been avoiding for months. Then she stood up, her face twisting with anger. You always think bad about me. You think I no good because I poor. You think Khmer girl only want money. That's not what I think, I said, my voice breaking. I think you used me. She turned away, her arms crossed, her shoulders rigid. You don't understand life here, she said. You don't understand what I need to do for my family. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to make her see what she'd done to me, but instead, I just felt empty. The fight drained out of me. I sat down, buried my face in my hands, and whispered, I gave you everything. That was the moment she went silent. When I finally looked up, she was standing by the door, her bag already packed. I go stay with my cousin, she said flatly. We talk later. But we never talked later. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space where her things had been. Her perfume still lingered, in the air, sweet and artificial. I wanted to believe she'd come back, that this was just a fight we'd fix like the others. But deep down, I knew it was over. The next morning, I went to the café where we first met. Lena, the owner, gave me a sympathetic look the moment I walked in. You okay, Mr. John? She asked. I forced a smile. Not really. She hesitated, then said quietly, I see Dara with man yesterday. Foreign man. At river. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my hands start to shake. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded sadly. Yes. They hold hands. Something inside me shattered. I left the cafe and wandered through the city like a ghost. The heat pressed down on me, the noise of traffic and shouting, vendors blurring into a single dull roar. Every corner I turned seemed to carry a memory. The street where she laughed at my first Khmer word, the park bench where we watched the sunset, the stall where she bought me mango slices and said, You like sweet like me. Now all of it felt poisoned. That night, I sent her a message. Just one word. Why? She didn't reply. A few days later, I saw her again by accident. I was walking along the riverside when I spotted her sitting with another man at a cafe terrace. He was older, maybe in his 50s, dressed in a crisp white shirt. She was wearing a new dress, smiling that same practiced smile she once gave me. For a second, she saw me. Our eyes met. Her smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of recognition, maybe guilt, but then she turned back to him, laughing like I'd never existed. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, until she and the man got up and walked away. That was when reality finally sank in. Everything I thought was love, the laughter, the late-night talks, the promises had been a performance, a beautiful illusion built on my loneliness and her need for survival. I went back to the apartment and opened the drawer where I kept the receipts from all the money transfers. There were over a dozen money sent for her mother, her brother, The fake shop, nearly $20,000 gone. It wasn't about the money though. It was about what it represented, the hope I'd poured into someone who saw me as nothing more than a lifeline. A week passed before I heard from her again. She called late at night, her voice soft and full of tears. "I'm sorry, Bong," she said. "I make mistake. I miss you. Can we talk?" Part of me wanted to hang up. But another part, the broken, desperate part, still wanted to believe there was something real left. So I agreed to meet her the next day at a small cafe near the market. She showed up late, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her demeanor was different, careful, almost rehearsed. She said she'd been confused, that she'd made bad choices, that she still loved me. Then she asked if I could help her one last time. Just small money for mother medicine. That was the moment the last piece of my denial finally crumbled. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her and said quietly, "You already took everything." She didn't cry this time. She just looked at me for a long moment, then stood up and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw Dara. When I went back to the apartment that night, I sat by the window watching the rain fall over Phnom Penh. The city lights shimmered on the wet streets like broken glass. I thought about the man she was with, about all the men who had come after me. I thought about how easily I'd fallen for a smile, for the illusion of being needed again. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. Maybe this wasn't just her fault. Maybe it was mine too. Because I wasn't looking for love, I was looking for rescue. And people who look for rescue often end up drowning. After Dara walked away that day, the silence she left behind felt like a living thing. It filled every corner of that apartment, followed me down the street, sat beside me in cafes where her laughter used to echo. I didn't realize how much space she had taken up in my life until she was gone. Or maybe I had known all along and just didn't want to face it. For days, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I replayed every conversation in my head, looking for the moment it all started to go wrong. I remember the first time she smiled at me, the way she looked at the sunset, the way she said, "I love you," in that trembling voice. And I wondered, was any of it real? Or had I just been another stop on a long road of survival and desperation? I started noticing things I'd ignored before, the way she always kept her phone screen turned away, the times she suddenly grew distant after I talked about going home, the way her eyes flickered whenever I mentioned money. The signs had been there from the start, but I'd buried them under hope, because hope is what makes fools of lonely men. I tried to keep myself busy. I started volunteering at a local English center, teaching young Cambodians who wanted to learn the language. They were kind, grateful, and full of dreams. It reminded me that not everyone was like her, that the world wasn't made entirely of deceit and manipulation. But even as I taught, even as I laughed with them, there was still a heaviness inside me. Every time I saw a woman with long black hair walking by the river, I'd feel that ache again, that stupid, pointless ache. I thought about flying back home, selling what little I had left, cutting my losses, and pretending Cambodia had never happened. But I couldn't bring myself to leave. Something about this place still felt unfinished, like it held both the wound and the cure. One evening, I went back to the riverside where Dara and I used to sit. The sun was setting, painting the water in soft gold. Couples strolled by, vendors laughed, children chased each other barefoot along the walkway. Life went on, indifferent to the wreckage inside me. A street musician played a slow, haunting melody on a bamboo flute. The sound drifted through the air, and for a moment, I closed my eyes and just listened. I realized then that the pain I felt wasn't really about losing Dara. It was about losing the version of myself I thought I was when I was with her, a man who still believed love could fix what life had broken. That illusion had been shattered, but maybe that was necessary. The following week, I finally went to the bank to close my Cambodian account. The clerk smiled politely as she handed me the remaining balance, a fraction of what I'd arrived with. I stared at the number on the receipt, then folded it and slipped it into my wallet. Money could be earned again, but trust? That was gone for good. That night, I packed up my things. The apartment looked smaller without her belongings scattered around. I found a few of her old photos tucked behind the dresser, snapshots of her with friends, her mother, even a younger version of herself at what looked like a festival. I stared at one for a long time, wondering if she'd ever truly loved anyone. Or if maybe, in her own way, she thought she was just surviving too. Because in Cambodia, in much of this part of the world, love and survival are tangled so tightly that sometimes even the people living it can't tell the difference. Before I left, I took one last walk through the city. The tuk-tuks, the honking, the smell of street food, it all felt different now, both familiar and foreign. Phnom Penh had given me everything I thought I wanted: warmth, companionship, adventure. But it had also taken something I didn't realize was so fragile: my faith in people. Still, as I watched the lights dance on the river, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not regret, but a quiet sort of peace. Maybe it was acceptance. Dara had taught me a lesson I'd spent years avoiding. A hard, ugly truth wrapped in the disguise of romance. That love, especially the kind we go searching for when we're broken, can be dangerous. Because when you're desperate to be seen, you'll ignore anything that threatens the illusion. You'll hand over your heart and sometimes your savings just to feel wanted. And people like Dara, they don't create your weakness, they just find it. In the months that followed, I stayed in Cambodia not because of her, but because of me. I started writing about what happened, hoping my story might keep another man from walking the same road. I met other expats who'd gone through nearly identical experiences, different names, different faces, same heartbreak. Some were bitter, some were broke, some still chasing the same fantasy. One of them said something that stuck with me. "We come here trying to escape our pain, but all we really do is meet it wearing a different smile." He was right. Eventually, I stopped checking my phone for her messages. I stopped walking by the places we used to go. I even stopped blaming her. Because in the end, Dara was just doing what life had taught her to do, survive, and I was doing what loneliness had taught me to do, hope. Maybe that's what makes paradise so dangerous. Not the people, not the place, but what we bring into it, our longing, our illusions, our need to believe that happiness can be bought with kindness and persistence. I finally left Cambodia 6 months later. As the plane lifted off, I looked down at the endless green fields and winding rivers, and I whispered a quiet goodbye. Not to her, to the man I used to be. Because that man, the one who came here looking for love to heal him, didn't exist anymore. All that remained was a story, a confession, a warning, and maybe that's enough. Because paradise isn't always what it seems. In paradise, everything has a price. This was Paradise Traps. Subscribe for more stories. Do you have a story of your own? Feel free to email it to us, and we will happily get in contact with you and share your story.